just very quickly, announcements from Eclipse and OW2. So EclipseCon is coming up actually 1 month from now. Lots of interesting sessions from IoT over IDE, automotive, edge, cloud, so from the whole Eclipse ecosystem. Have a look at the website and register. It's free and virtual again, as it was last year. And with that, I hand over to Cedric.
Thanks, Marco. Thank you. Hello, everybody. So very quickly, we also have we will be present at Open Source Experience in Paris, 9th and 10th of November. So we will have booths and sessions running. So please check out the open source-experience.com website to find out what we will be talking about. And on the next slide, another announcement. Marco, please, thank you. OW2 organizes a conference track at the SFSCon, so please check it out. That will be on November 12th and 13th. So that will be a busy week for us. And on another website, reachoutproject.eu, we have the Test Fest organized. So Reach Out is a platform to help organize web beta testing campaigns. So check them out. You fill in the questionnaire, and then there will even be recognition and money prizes to win. So that's all for the quick announcements. And now for the first presentation this afternoon, it's proactive machine learning, PML from ActiveEon, which is an open source platform for the distribution and parallelization of machine learning workloads, ML, and that runs on any large infrastructure. So it enables researchers, data scientists, developers, and IT administrators to work together to design and automate machine learning pipelines. So that covers the whole chain from development to production. So into production, it manages the distributed experiments, dispatches, and runs parallel jobs generated by tuning algorithm to search the optimal neural architecture. It provides real-time monitoring of the experience and the performance, and it generates alerts when any issue of importance is detected. So it's over to you, ActiveEon, to convince us even a bit further.
Thank you, Cedric. Thank you, Marco. Let me share my screen. Perfect. So thank you again, Marco and Cedric, so for the introduction. So I'd like to hello everyone present here, and my name is Andres, and I work as an AI solution architect at ActiveEon, and I am currently leading the ML team from ActiveEon, and we are about 5 PhDs from different AI domains, working together to improve and to automation. The automation of AI pipelines, sorry. So today I would like to present to you how we can automate AI and ML from other ML ops using the ActiveEon solution that is named the PML. So I will first do some introduction. I will talk about the release process of a typical data science project, a little bit about the life cycle, roadmap, challenges, and sorry, just let me, yeah, and what an enterprise level data science project needs. Next I will talk a bit about what is ML ops, what is it, and its evolution. Then I introduce the PML platform from ActiveEon and how we can bring up the maturity level of a data science project. Finally, I will show how a data science project pipeline can be managed with PML, as well its key components, filters, and capabilities. So let's consider a typical data science project lifecycle. So the first step is the data ingestion. Data may come from different kind of source like sensors, cameras, social networks, transactions. And we need to build a data ingestion layer that enables us to store data like a data lake. Today, we talk a lot about data lakes and the data warehouse. Data lakes is mostly used to store raw data, a vast pool of raw data, where data warehouse is a kind of repository for structured, filtered data that has already been processed for a specific purpose. Then we need to prepare this data to be used for training some machine learning models, etc. And once we got a good machine learning model, we need to deploy it somewhere, integrate by integrating the email model into the final project, like serving it as a via REST API or embedding it inside an edge device, etc. So what we see is that this pipeline, when this pipeline comes to be complex, like training multiple models in parallel, high frequency models, update, its automation becomes more and more relevant. This is why an automated ML pipeline is needed. Moreover, usually a data scientist spend a few weeks or months doing a lot of experiments to find a good ML model. And once we got it, once a good ML model is found, a lot of time is spent during its operationalization process, because we need to package it, we need to put the dependencies together, we need to do some kind of data partition, model distribution, we need to do some parallelism, put GPU support, something like the caching. We need to monitor it in production. We need to do some CI/CD process, create some workflows, etc. So this step, operationalization step, is very large and takes a lot of time. It can be months with a large team of developers and science. And then again, those last steps in red, they require more and more to be automated. So why data science project is complex? So let's take a close look from a typical machine learning engineering side. This is what we usually do during an ML model construction. We start by fetching some data from any source, preprocessing it, versioning it, etc. And we also spend a lot of time in the internal loop of model engineering and model evaluation, this step in red here. And once we got some machine interaction, like a model usually, we should package it, do some versioning and deploy it somewhere. In summary, a machine learning engineering process consists of finding the correct AI pipeline that provides the best AI model. So from those experiments, usually we have a kind of pipeline at the end. But this is not all. Usually the machine learning engineering process, as we see before, is only the first part of the whole AI workflow. The second part is one of the most important, that concerns how we can operate it in production. So we need to translate those experiments into an automated pipeline or pipelines. So you can serve it like a ML model serving. And when this model is deployed, we need to check its prediction performance in production, like accuracy, same for its prediction speed, etc. And check if the deployed model fits well the production data, because sometimes data can change and we can have a kind of deviation. So in general, we can have a kind of trigger, this step here, like a data deviation detection mechanism that will trigger the automated pipeline, this one, to train any model. And depending of the deviation and the complexity of the changement in the data, sometimes we should restart the experiments to create a new pipeline that finally will be automated. The operationalization step, sorry. So, but the complexity of the data science project is not always related to technical AI problems or pipelines. Depending on the size of the data science project, we could have different teams working together, like teams of data scientists, ML engineers. From one side, we have programmers, web developers working together in the other side. And the same for the IT specialists and the system administrators. And what we see is that depending on the size of a data science project, we need to bridge the gap between those teams, because they have different methodology of work, they have different, they use different tools and etc. So more the data science project is big, and more we could have gaps between those teams. Same for the communication and the release process. And next, data scientists and ML engineers also need a kind of a hardware abstraction layer to do the experiments, because data scientists and ML engineers usually use different kind of computers infrastructure to access GPU set for model training, storage to fetch some data, CPU servers for other stuffs, etc. So usually this kind of complexity is present on large enterprise, and some of them, for example, having HPC environments or a kind of hybrid infrastructure. So more the infrastructure is complex, more we need a kind of hardware abstraction layer to fill the gap between those teams that are not very technical, talking about the IT domain, but yes, they need use some kind of tool to work properly and well. So if we summary about what we have seen in the previous slide, we checked some needs, so we can conclude that data scientists need first a modern automation platform for doing the experiments with the capability to go through production easily, and same for simplifying teams, communication, collaborative work. And in the other side, in the right, they need a modern methodology for their work, and this methodology we call today ML Ops. So some people describe it as data, ML, and DevOps. So we try to extend the DevOps methodology to the data science domain. So let's start talk a little bit about ML Ops and what is it. So ML Ops aims to unify the release cycle of machine learning software application. So as I said before, so it tries to bring DevOps to machine learning, to data science, enabling the application of agile principles to the machine learning project. And the ML Ops enable automated testing of machine learning artifacts like data validation, ML model tests, etc., and a lot more. So for those who are interested to ML Ops, there is a good website that we call ml.ops.org. And that contains a lot of good resources about this methodology. Then now let's talk about how a modern automation platform should be. So if we check the evolution of ML Ops, or maybe the evolution of data science itself, we check what we see is that before 2015, we did a lot of handcraft process, doing a lot of work using different tools without a clear methodology process. And then after 2015, we go through this containerization era, using containers to embed and deploy applications. And finally, the ML Ops era with the arrival of modern tools and the new methodology, and this new methodology that we call today ML Ops, to unify the software and the ML development process. And and the proactive machine learning product from ActiveEon comes here as a modern automation platform for ML Ops. So how proactive machine learning helps you? So it helps you to automate the complete data science life cycle. It removes the silos by creating a bridge between teams, data, ML, and the operations. You can use your favorite tools by integrating a vast array of solutions. And you can use your own infrastructure by linking heterogeneous working environments. So at least you can industrialize your data science lifecycle project and scale it up easily when needed. So proactive machine learning stands in the center of the data science world. So at the core of data science, and it's how can I say, its main advantage is that it helps you to bring up the maturity level of a data science project by helping enterprise to automate the manual process. Because, for example, more than 18% of data science projects stay in manual process. So this is very, very, very common in a lot of companies. For example, people use a lot of Jupyter notebooks to do experiments, and even the model training and the model deployments are very manual. And we call it stage 1. And proactive machine learning help you to exit from this manual process and go to the stage 2, doing ML pipeline automation. So it's this next level is we see that less than 20% of data science projects come here. So the goal of stage 2 is to automate, so the continuous process of training and deploy and model deployment. So for example, whenever new data is available, the process model retrain is triggered. And this level of automation also includes data and model validation steps. And moreover, usually when we are good in the stage 2, the stage 3 is more related to CI/CD pipeline automation, so we introduce the CI/CD system to perform fast and reliable ML model deployments in production. Usually, people that are in the stage 2, some of these companies are able, so usually less than 5% of data science projects come here because it's more like stronger methodology adoption and a stronger pipeline automation via CI/CD. So this is an illustration of a PML workflow that describes how a sample AI pipeline for model training and deployment can be automated easily using pre-built and customizable tasks provided by the solution, as you can see here. And this next slide, we summarize some key components from ActiveEon. So we provide a lot of data connectors and workflows template for those that want to automate and scale up easily the data ingestion, data preparation pipeline. Same for the model training. For example, for data scientists, we have AutoML capability to scale up model tuning during experiments. We have Jupyter kernel and Python connector to create AI workflows from code. We have a lot of internal mechanisms to deploy ML model as a service. We can also trigger Jupyter Lab as a service and use some existing tools together with the solution itself. And to finalize, this is some screenshots showing some capabilities to track and monitor model training. As well, we can manage track, for example, the tracking and of your machine learning experiments, as well the abstraction of computer resource and scaling up your workloads dynamically. So I invite you to see more in the link below. And I'd like to thank you for watching, and you can see more information in the proactive machine learning website, PML website. Thank you.
So our next speaker is Jan-Philipp Steghöfer, and Jan-Philipp is an associate professor at the Interaction Design and Software Engineering Division of Chalmers University of Technology and the University of Gothenburg. In his research, he studies how organizations can use traceability to achieve their goals, how developers interact with traceability links and traceability management tools, and how traceability can be integrated into existing processes. And last but not least, Jan-Philipp is one of the committers of the Eclipse Capra project. So Jan-Philipp, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Marco, and thanks everybody for joining us today. I am going to give you a brief introduction in Eclipse Capra and what you can do with it and why you should care. And I hope by the end of this, I'm going to have a couple of new contributors to the project. So first of all, let me start to talk a little bit about what traceability is and why you should care about it. So in a development process, systems or software engineering, you have a whole bunch of artifacts that you produce while you are developing your system. And here in this example, you have requirements in natural language that are managed by something like doors, or maybe are just in an Excel file. Then you have something out of the model-based systems engineering domain. Here we see a model out of the consents domain-specific language that is used for this. And then you have software requirements engineering here, scenario, model and scenario tools. And then down the line, you would have even more. You would have UML diagrams, you would have code, you would have test cases, and so on and so forth. Now, if you're building a safety or security critical system, then you need to be able to show that your requirements are implemented correctly and are validated. And for that purpose, you need to have traceability links between the different parts of your system. So you should be able to show that your requirement has found its way into your design, has found its way into your software requirements, into your code, into your tests. But also, if you build systems that are not safety or security critical, you might want to have traceability because it enables you to do things like change impact analysis. So if I change this obstacle detection requirement here and I have traceability, then I can very easily see which part of the system are going to be affected by this change. And that can make your life as an engineer much easier. But of course, you have an upfront investment and you need to establish these traceability links. And then once the links are established, you need to actually maintain them. You need to be able to update them, delete them, and make use of them, for instance, via visualizations and analysis. And this is what Eclipse Capra does. I mean, it's not the only tool that does this. There are existing tools, mostly very big and expensive commercial tools that do this. And they are what we call holistic tools. So this is a snapshot from a paper that we published in 2016 at the Automated Software Engineering Conference, where we sort of looked at the design space of traceability management tools. And here on the left, these holistic tools, there you have things like Polarion from Siemens, for instance, or the IBM Application Lifecycle Management Suites. And these are tools that take care of all of the artifacts that you create during your development process, right? So they manage all of your models, all of your source code, all of your tests, and so on. And that makes it easy to establish traceability between them. But it also means that you are limited to this tool, right? So everything that you do, you need to do inside of Polarion. And with Capra, we have a different approach. With Capra, we are building a separate traceability management tool that is based on the Eclipse platform, which is very extensible and which allows you to connect to almost arbitrary artifacts in your development process. And I will show a couple of examples of this in a second. But the idea is that Capra is sort of the spider in the net, which can connect to everything that you want to create and helps you show the connections between these different artifacts within Eclipse. So a couple of examples of what we support out of the box. So we support requirements in Excel, in Word, RecIF, Google Docs, with some limitations also doors via RecIF export. We support variability by supporting models, feature models in Feature IDE. We support tests and builds in Jenkins and Hudson. We support a number of different programming languages, of course, including Java, C++, Python, PHP. We support different design modeling tools, Papyrus, Mechatronic UML. We have an experimental Capella handler, and other tools such as App4MC, which is one of the outcomes of the Panorama project, which allows you to model heterogeneous systems. And even if the tools that you are using are not on this slide, it's very easy to actually extend Capra to make Capra understand your tools as well, or the artifacts that your tools produce as well. It's easier if they're part of the Eclipse ecosystem, but it's not necessary. As you can see, we can link to Excel files, so we can take care of almost everything. So Eclipse Capra comes from a need that we saw back in 2016 when we started the work in the MLTF for Public ITEA project, that there is no reliable, actively developed and extensible universal open source traceability tool. And with universal, I mean that it's not limited to a certain set of artifacts. There are a couple of tools that are specific to requirements traceability, for instance. Back when we started, there was an Eclipse project called RecCycle, for instance. But none of the tools that we saw back then and that we see now, even 5 years later, is universal in the sense that Capra is, that it actually allows you to bring in artifacts from the entire development lifecycle. We had a number of requirements from the industrial partners in these projects that we started out with, and we have continued to use the input from the industrial partners in a number of research projects, the ones listed here, MLTF for Public, Panorama, Bumble, but also Revamp and national research projects to drive the development of Capra. And the goal with this is, on the one hand, of course, to allow us to do interesting research. And for that, you really need a vehicle. If you want to study how traceability works in practice, you need to have something that is practical. So these research prototypes that we see pop up every now and again, where a PhD student, while they are working on their 3 or 4 year dissertation, comes up with a set of Python scripts to solve a specific traceability problem, are very good in terms of producing research results, but they're not very good in terms of being able to embed into an actual industrial development process. And with Capra, we have that ambition. We want to actually study traceability where it's being used. And therefore, we are trying to get Capra to industrial strength so that it should be usable in production. And we have seen that in the past. So with some limitations, Capra has been used in a productive context. While at the same time being able to drive our research and do interesting studies with the partners that adopt Capra. And as you can see from these numbers, we have been reasonably successful with this, and it is an important tool in our research and also in our education, as witnessed by the number of thesis projects that have been associated with Capra. Okay, but let me show you Capra in action. This makes it easier to understand what the tool is and what the tool does. So what we can see here is an Eclipse runtime environment where I have a number of projects open, and these are from a data set that we have just recently completed and presented at the Requirements Engineering Conference just last week, which is called Mobster. It's a data set for an autonomous driving system. And of course, you can see here a component diagram that is modeled in Papyrus. And as you can see, we have a component called the LiDAR grabber. And now we want to create a traceability link with the LiDAR grabber as the source. And each component has failure modes, which are captured in a fault tree analysis. And we now want to create a trace link to this failure mode. So I drag and drop the failure mode into this window, select one of the possible trace link types. The connections between these artifacts are typed. I select the related to, click the plus, and now the link has been created. There's an option to have a message there, but this gets annoying after you create a bunch of links. And now down here in the matrix viewer, I can see that this link has been created. You can see there's a related to link here, but you can also see that there's another link here that already existed, which was called has failure mode. So now we have 2 traceability links between component and this particular failure. And of course, this sort of redundancy you usually want to avoid. So the next step is to delete this trace link. And of course, this is also possible with Capra. For this purpose, I go to the matrix viewer, select the LiDAR grabber component again, and here I see the link. I can click it, click on delete link, and it's gone. So this way you are able, and here you can also see that it's gone. This way you are able to delete links and remove, for instance, redundancies or links that are no longer relevant, which also happens from time to time. Okay, so now we have these links and we can delete them. What can you actually do with them? A typical task is what is called change impact analysis. So you are changing a part of the system, a requirement or a component or something else, and you want to see what else is affected. So here I'm now selecting a so-called runnable. That's a representation of the LiDAR software. And we can see in the Sunburst viewer what it connects to. Oh, excuse me, that was not my intention. It connects to a, sorry about that. Here we go. So it connects to the component in which it runs. And that is the thing that is in dark blue in the outside circle. And then it connects to a bunch of failures. If I click on the component, I can see the failures a little bit bigger. So now I know that this LiDAR function, this runnable, is connected to the component and to the failures. And of course, I can also see this in this matrix, in this graph view. Here I also see the component and I see the failures. And that gives me the ability to check. So if I change the implementation of this LiDAR function, which failure modes do I need to look at? And which failure modes do I need to check if they're still correct, or if I have maybe mitigated them and I want to add this mitigation to my safety analysis. Another typical task is coverage analysis. The canonical example for this is that I want to check if all of my requirements have an associated test case. Here in this case, we are looking at something slightly different. We are checking if the failure modes are connected to hazards. So hazards are also from safety analysis. They are sort of the top level things that can go wrong in your system. And here we see that this failure is actually connected to 4 different hazards. So this is obviously relatively complete. Now I'm checking whether the component is connected to failure modes. And that is also the case. So this GPS grabber component is connected to 3 different failure modes. And again, the matrix viewer allows me to see this. And we have additional functionality here. For instance, you can export this matrix as an Excel file, which allows you, for instance, to include this sort of analysis into a report that you would not like to provide for a safety analysis when your system goes to a certification authority. Okay, so these are some basic functions of Eclipse Capra. There's, of course, a lot more under the hood that you can do. We have support for metadata. We have, so you can basically say, you can attach data to a link, like who created it, when it was created, the rationale for why it was created. We have, as I said, a lot of different artifacts that you can connect to. But it is also clear to us that tools like Capra is never a turnkey solution. So it needs to be configured and adapted to the organization that uses it and to the developers that use it. So we designed Capra from the beginning to be extremely extensible. And the first thing that you can do is define a custom TIM. A TIM is a traceability information model, and it basically defines which artifacts can be connected to each other and what the meaning of these connections is. And here you can see an excerpt of the Xcore file for the TIM from the example that we just saw. So you can see, for instance, that an element from a safety case is connected to a failure mode and effects analysis by an addressed by FMEA. You can also see that we have different cardinalities, that this is strongly typed. So this allows you to do a lot of consistency checks already at runtime, and for instance, prevent a user from creating trace links that are not correct according to this TIM. So this is relatively easy. You just need to write this Xcore file and then click a button, and then you have a Capra version that uses this custom TIM. And then the other thing is that you can easily extend Capra to handle a lot more artifacts than it handles now. So whichever domain-specific language, whatever programming language you have, it's relatively easy to take care of this. This here is a more complex example. So this is about 20 lines of code. If you have something that takes that EMF can take care of, it's only like 6 lines of code. You don't need to understand the source code here right away. I just want to show you that it's relatively simple to build these things. So you can relatively easily extend Capra with this sort of functionality if you need it. And we're constantly adding new adapters as requirements from our industrial partners are coming in. And last but not least, you can extend the visualizations and the analysis that we have. So both the sunburst viewer and this matrix view that I've showed you earlier have been created by students of mine in thesis projects. I've put here a simplified sequence diagram of how you get all of the information that you need to render these sort of visualizations. And as you can see, it's a couple of method calls, and then you have all the data that you can then use however you like. We're currently working on a number of additional analysis steps and having made metrics that give us some indication about the quality of the traceability links that you have created and so on. So this is also something that we're constantly expanding and extending. Right, so conclude. Eclipse Capra is extremely extensible and flexible. We have built it so that it is easy to adapt it to your own needs. You can use it out of the box as it is, but if you want to, you can really get your feet wet and turn it into something that is very, very customized to your needs. Everything is open source. It's an Eclipse project currently in incubation. So you find everything about the development process is open and available to the public. It is compatible with a lot of common artifacts directly out of the box. So if your development environment is Eclipse, it's really easy to plug it in and just use it as it is. We are driving research with it, but it is also very much driven by research. So we're trying out new things and trying to release these new things to whoever wants to adopt them as well. And as with any open source project, we are always happy for new committers and people who can help us extend Capra and add features that are relevant to everybody in the community. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot for this interesting presentation, Jan-Philipp. So thanks again to both speakers, to Andrus and Jan-Philipp, and also to everybody who joined this session. I hope you found it interesting. And with that, we can conclude. The next Open Research webinar is planned for the 18th of January. So mark that in your calendars. And again, thanks everybody, and have a nice evening, and hopefully meet you next time.